NASCAR is back for the 2024 season, and if you're brand new to NASCAR because of the wonderful documentary that Netflix put together, welcome on in. What we're going to do today on Shifting Gears from the LA Memorial Coliseum is break down everything that you can expect from every single driver and every single team in the NASCAR Cup Series for the 2024 season. Don't go anywhere. It's the 2024 season preview show right here on Shifting Gears.
High, push it, checker flag, hell yeah!
What's the caution for?
Can they not push it in?
Stop anybody.
Come on, these guys! Way to go, boys! One hell of a job, man, one hell of a job. Thank you so much.
I'm Alan Bailey, and welcome on into the LA Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles, California. Right now, the sun is out. Yeah, that's bright. And we are having a great time out here. It's the Friday before the LA Clash. This is going up the next day. So tonight, cars on track for the first heat races to set the field for the 2024 LA Clash out here at the LA Memorial Coliseum. So do me a favor, if you're brand new to NASCAR, brand new to the channel, make sure that you mash that subscribe button so that you do not miss a video in 2024, and make sure that you log on to arnrace.com for the latest motorsports news. ARN, the Motorsports Authority. I'm having a great time. Sun's out. Yes, we might be seeing rain, unfortunately, hit the Southern California area on Sunday. NASCAR's back in town. Of course, rain is on its way into Los Angeles for the first time all year, really. But you know what? That's okay, because we're talking about what to expect in 2024 in the NASCAR Cup Series. As music comes on up behind me, we're going to try to not get demonetized out here, but I will tell you, we will go kind of by points, owner points, how they finished in 2023, kind of recapping everything that we saw for the NASCAR Cup Series. But we're going to go ahead and go by order of the owner standings in 2023 to talk about who has a chance at winning and what needs to happen on the racetrack and off the racetrack in order for your favorite driver to be in contention. So obviously we're going to go ahead and start with Team Penske. Ryan Blaney winning the NASCAR championship. Not super consistent all season long, but then got hot when it counts in the playoffs. And for 2 years in a row, Penske did this and really showed it doesn't matter what you do during the regular season. You don't even have to be hot the first half of the playoffs. You have to turn up the wick about the midway point of the playoffs and get hot all the way into Phoenix. And Joey Logano did that 2 years ago. Ryan Blaney did it last year, and they stand chance to do it again in 2024. Keep an eye on them. Joey Logano, though, honestly, this is a make-or-break year for Joey Logano, and I'm being dead serious. He's been off here and there the last couple of years. Yes, he won a championship 2 years ago, but didn't really show up in 2023, admittingly. His teammate did, but he didn't. And he has another couple of off years, and he's going to start looking like that guy that really needs to start looking over his shoulder at the younger drivers to take his ride. I do think that he can turn it around. He's an extremely good driver, but I'm interested to see what we see out of Joey Logano. And Austin Cindric in that 2 car needs to step it up in 2024. Yes, that sophomore slump is a thing, but honestly, yikes. I'm deeply concerned for him. I truly am. Honestly, I think he's safe because of his name and because of who he is in that organization, but I easily see Penske starting up the Xfinity program and sending him back down to the Xfinity Series, similar to what happened with Cole Custer, if he doesn't step it up in the Cup Series soon. So keep an eye on Austin Cindric in 2024. Hendrick Motorsports, Kyle Larson leading the charge, finishing second last season with 4 wins. Honestly, he's probably going to do it again this year. He's going to be doing the Indy Coke Double, 1,100 miles in one day. That's a big feat. And honestly, I don't know how he's going to do in that. That's going to be a massive storyline come the month of May. But honestly, Larson just couldn't get it done in Phoenix for whatever reason. Hendrick is a little off. They're kind of blaming that on the old Chevy when Ford and with Toyota bringing in new models for 2024. And I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the excuse. If they're bad, it's because something else is happening with that organization. So we're going to keep an eye on them. William Byron, 6 wins. Nowadays, I mean, Larson did win 10 races not too long ago, but that was with the old car. With this new car, You win 4, 5, 6 races, that will get you the most wins in a season, and that's what happened with William Byron last year. First time making the Final Four last year. He's poised to do it again this year. Him and Rudy Fugel, his crew chief, really stepped it up last year, and honestly, I expect them to do the same this year. They were just a little off at Phoenix for whatever reason, and that was really the difference to not winning a championship. Oh boy, Chase Elliott, the prodigal son of NASCAR, NASCAR's most popular driver. He got hurt early on last season. That really hindered him all year long. He had surgery a few weeks ago. He is now recovered from that supposedly. But honestly, he got suspended and just wasn't good. That car was just off all year long, even with replacement drivers. Yes, Josh Berry bringing it home second out at Richmond was the best finish for that number 9. But just a little off, you know. They're going to have to really step it up, and honestly, if he doesn't win at least 2 races in 2024, it's an off year. But I do think that they're going to bounce back. I think Chase is definitely coming back healthier than he has, at least in a year, and I think he's more motivated, and he was extraordinarily optimistic when we talked to him out at Phoenix a few months ago. So I do think that he's coming back a little bit refreshed, and that could be dangerous for the field. Alex Bowman, which version are we going to get? I don't know. We're either going to get the out to lunch version of Alex or the, oh boy, he's here to win and he's going to rattle off 2, 3 victories. And this could go either way. He's got a lot of pressure behind him with Ally and with Hendrick Motorsports kind of looking down his throat going, what's going on with you, bud? And I think he knows that. Same thing. He got hurt last year and that really affected him all year. I don't know if he's fully recovered, if I'm being honest. Typically when you see a lower back injury, it does take 6 months to a year, according to some NASCAR drivers, to really get back to 100%, which means sometime this season he could be back at 100% if he's not already. So if he's not going by the midway point of the season, it's going to be another 0-win season for him. So keep an eye on Bowman. Joe Gibbs Racing leading the pack. We have Christopher Bell with 2 victories, finished 4th in the standings last year. Honestly, a mechanical failure prevented him from winning a championship, honestly. And did he have anything for the 12, the 24, and the 5 last year? I don't know. He wasn't running that great when he had the brake issue, but this guy needs to work on his self-confidence, similar to a Bubba Wallace a few years ago. He's just really down on himself, and he's doubting his abilities. He's made the Final Four the last 2 years. I fully expect him to make it a 3rd year in a row, sincerely, but for some reason he doesn't, and that self-doubt might be his downfall heading in to Homestead again for a 3rd year in a row in 2024. So keep an eye on Bell. He's got way too much talent, and he's too damn good. That organization's too damn good. Denny Hamlin finished 5th with 3 victories. Same thing. Denny Hamlin's cockiness prevented him from winning a championship this year. And I don't mean anything that happened on the racetrack. I mean off the racetrack. And I don't mean always doing too many things or anything like that. And yeah, he's busy. Instead, he was the one who said, you know, I got this shoulder issue. I can go another year. It's fine. I'm good. I'm Denny Hamlin. I can do whatever I want. And then guess what? Fell apart in the playoffs. He couldn't even lift that shoulder up to flip switches and do things in the race car, and really had some issues. We saw the footage, the in-car footage in the NASCAR Netflix documentary when he hit the wall out at Homestead, and a lot of people said, you know, maybe him overdriving it and just, you know, chopping at that wheel with one hand did it, and maybe that was something, but clearly in the race car something broke. So my eyes are on Toyota. They're kind of diluting their resources a little bit, with Joe Gibbs Racing 2311 being one side of that Toyota coin, and then Legacy Motor Club switching to Toyota being separate from the other Toyota teams. So how do those resources get divided up? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. Maybe one side of the coin hits on something and the other doesn't, or vice versa. How awkward is it going to be if Joe Gibbs Racing doesn't find some speed with this new Toyota Camry and Legacy does? It's just going to be very interesting to see how the power struggle plays out with Toyota and with Joe Gibbs Racing 2311 and Legacy this year. Hamlin supposedly is healthy, but I question if he's back at 100% yet. Mentally, I think he's there, which is saying something, because this is a guy who has struggled with mental focusness in the race car and out of the race car for years. And I do think he's there mentally. I just don't see him winning a championship, but maybe I'm wrong. You look at Martin Truex Jr., 3 victories last season, finished 11th in the point standings. Someone pointed this out on Twitter, and I'm really taking notice to it. If he only races the Cup Series and doesn't do Xfinity or any truck starts this year, Phoenix in November will be his 800th NASCAR start. That's a nice round number to go out on top of. Honestly, I think that this is MTJ's final year. He says he doesn't know yet. He's still kind of debating it and mulling it. I think he's done. I truly think that he's at the point where he doesn't want to do this anymore. He had a really, really, really rough playoffs, great regular season, and then just a rough playoff run, and I think he's going to have a rough year, and I think by April, May, he's going to be tapping out, and I expect an announcement by the time we hit the summer months and we get out to those summer heated months that he'll be retiring, and it's just a gut feeling. I don't have any insider information on that now, but I sense it because frankly, I don't see Martin Truex Jr. going through a third year of, hey, Martin, is this your last year? You coming back next year? I don't think he's going to put up with that. He already gets annoyed with it now, and he's a guy who I think is ready to retire. I think he's ready to kind of go away. We already know that he's the guy who really shows up at the racetrack on Saturday and Sunday, and then he doesn't talk to anybody Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then about Thursday, Friday, he hits up people and says, hey, where am I going this week? What am I doing? Where am I? Who am I? So maybe that could change, maybe not. Ty Gibbs in the number 54 finished 18th in the point standings last year, no wins. Honestly, the sophomore slump could be real for Ty Gibbs, but I have a feeling he's going to step it up next year. I would argue this last year was a sophomore slump because he ran so many races in 2022, filling in for Kurt Busch. Honestly, I think he could step it up. I expect him to make the playoffs. I question whether or not he's going to get multiple wins or point his way in, but it's going to be fascinating to see if Toyota can step it up in a big, bad way. The other Toyota team, 2311, Tyler Rennick finished 6th in the point standings. His first year at 2311 in a Toyota, 2 victories out at a road course and then out at Kansas in the playoffs. He had a much better year than I was expecting him to have, honestly. I thought he was going to go out round 1 or 2, and he went pretty far in the playoffs this last year, made it up to 6th in the point standings by the end of it. I expect him to get at least 2 or 3 victories this coming year. I think that 2311 has been building the last few years. This last year was definitely a building year. And Denny Hamlin himself said that he expects to be contending for championships either this year or next year with 2311. I'm hearing that they're trying to expand to a 3-car organization for 2025. So that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But Tyler Rennick just making so many little mistakes on the racetrack and not keeping up with the changes in the race car or bad pit calls. And I do think that 2311 is poising themselves to kind of overtake Joe Gibbs Racing, honestly. Gibbs has been kind of missing something over there, and 2311 just moved into a brand new building. They have bays for 4 haulers, and that's by design over there. They want to be a 4-car powerhouse organization, and come 10 years from now, I think Joe Gibbs Racing will be 2-car organization with 2311 being a 4-car organization. Just how quickly that plan plays out, I don't know. The other side of the 2311 coin, Bubba Wallace, 17th in the point standings because of the owner points with Chase Elliott getting in. Chase Elliott finished 10th in the point standings, and Bubba Wallace 17th. Bubba Wallace owner points did not make the postseason. It's confusing, but no victories. That needs to change. He came so damn close to winning a race out at Texas in the playoffs, which would have been massive for him advancing, obviously. But I think that, honestly, they're going to step it up this year. At least they need to. Whether or not they will or not, I don't know. He's gotten very close to winning the Daytona 500 a couple times, and I do think that he's going to have another shot here in a few weeks. So I do think that Bubba Wallace is going to win a race, maybe 2 this season. We're just going to have to wait and see if they're able to make the playoffs again. The race team that really surprised people, RFK, man. I mean, talk about consistency. Chris Buescher in the 17 car, finishing 7th in the point standings with 3 victories. Brad Keselowski in the 6th, finishing 8th with no victories. I think that Chris Buescher is going to rattle off another couple of victories this season. Brad needs to win. If Brad Keselowski does not win a race in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2024, he will never win another Cup race. I'm calling it right now because it's very obvious he's focused on making that team better. He's focused on the business side of making that team better with the technical partnerships that they just announced a few weeks ago. But I question if he's putting in the time he really needs to in the car. He just had another child with his family, so he's very busy. His attention is split, similar to Denny Hamlin. But honestly, Something's off. Something's off with Brad. I think he's just too distracted. He's too overwhelmed with everything happening. And who can blame the guy? I think that just driving is suffering right now, unfortunately. And at some point, he's going to get out of that car, and I don't see him racing in 4 years. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's going to rattle off 2-3 victories this year. It just doesn't feel like it. Trackhouse. Oh, talk about your ups and downs within your organization. You have Ross Chastain finishing 9th in the postseason, or in the point standings, I should say, with 2 victories. He just got that Busch Beer sponsorship, so he's got a little bit of pressure from outside the race car hindering on him right now. He's going to have to rise to the occasion with Busch Beer behind him now, and I think he's going to do it. I consider him a playoff threat. I consider him a Final Four threat. On the flip side of that, Daniel Suarez, 19th in the point standings, no victories last year. Yikes. This guy's racing for his life. If he doesn't win this year, he's looking for a ride, and he knows that. He's got more pressure on him than arguably anyone in the Cup Series right now, and that's dangerous if I'm Daniel Suarez. But at the same time, he's racing the NASCAR Mexico race out here. And honestly, he could step it up. He could get 2-3 victories. This could be a breakout year for Daniel Suarez. But at the same time, he only has a single victory. And that might be his only ever Cup Series victory if he doesn't step it up this year. So a lot of pressure on Daniel Suarez this year, especially with Shane Van Gisbergen, and you have the number 71 of Zane Smith all on that Trackhouse umbrella, all breathing down his neck. I'm worried if I'm Daniel Suarez about my ride for 2025. SVG going to be making a handful of starts in the number 16 car. Supposedly that car is going to be prepared by Trackhouse in the Cup Series for him. This is kind of cool, honestly. I think he could potentially be in Cup full-time next year. It depends on how he does on the oval stuff, how quick he picks it up, but he's a champion of the V8 Supercars down in Australia. He won, obviously, out at Chicago this year, and I do think that he has the potential to win Chicago again and win a couple of more road courses. But like a Marcus Ambrose, is that enough to carry you into the playoffs and far into the playoffs? With 2 playoff races in the playoffs, or 2 road course races in the playoffs this year, Daniel Suarez, Shane Van Gisbergen definitely can make something happen. But again, Shane Van Gisbergen not full-time yet. This one. Stewart Haas Racing. Check, please. I seriously, you look at Gene Haas, he's clearly not paying attention. He's focused on his F1 team. Tony Stewart is going drag racing full-time next year with his wife stepping out of the Top Fuel car because they're starting a family. So Tony's attention is split, to say the least. So's Gene Haas's, and because of that, there's no clear leader over there. They have 2 new drivers, with Josh Berry taking over the 4 and Noah Gragson taking over the 10 car. They are desperately looking for sponsorship dollars over there. Noah has no sponsorships this year, none. They have one sponsor that's been a team sponsor that's on the car, almost as like, just here's a freebie for you because, why not? Noah's desperately looking for sponsorship right now. So is that whole organization. I do think that Josh Berry in that 4 car is probably your franchise driver over there for SHR, but not for a year or 2. They could step it up in the midway point of the season and find some speed. I really do think that Rodney Childress, Josh Berry will find something, especially when we get to Martinsville. But is that enough to make the playoffs? No, I don't consider them playoff threats at all. I'm not even paying attention to Ryan Preece because he's just struggling. Respectfully, the 4 car finished 13th, but that was with Harvick outracing his equipment. You had Eric Almirola in the 10 car last year finishing 22nd, Ryan finishing 23rd, and Chase Briscoe, because of the penalty, finishing 30th. Briscoe is your franchise driver at the moment. He's probably the guy to keep an eye on to potentially point his way into the playoffs, but I think they're all going to finish sub 20th. Honestly, if they finish inside the top 20, any of them this year, it's a massive win for the team. It's clearly rebuilding. I think 2025 could be a big year for them. They're kind of counting on the fact that the new Ford Dark Horse Mustang body is going to save them, and that's a massive question mark that we'll have to wait to see. RCR with Kyle Busch in the A car finishing 14th in the point standings, 3 victories last year. Austin Dillon in the 3, 29th with no victories. Austin Dillon had 10 DNFs last year, and people are saying, oh, that's what kept him from making the playoffs. Yes. No, Austin Dillon is the thing keeping Austin Dillon from making the playoffs. No offense to the guy. He's not that great. He's fine. He's a fine driver. I think he's a Sam Ark type Xfinity driver. He can go dominate the Xfinity Series, but he's the guy that manages to sneak a victory in the Cup Series every 2-3 years because of fuel mileage, because of the restart of his life, because 90% of the field crashes out at Daytona because of rain in turn 1. Austin Dillon takes advantage of things because he's so slow that he avoids accidents. That's how he gets his victories. I'm not dissing the guy. That is the fact. And he's about due for a victory, so maybe he's going to play the fuel mileage game. Maybe he's going to get lucky at Daytona, and maybe he'll make the playoffs off points, but I don't know. I don't think so. Kyle Busch, they just fell off in the postseason. I think Kyle Busch is having a little bit of buyer's remorse picking RCR now, because now Kyle Busch is realizing, oh yeah, there's a reason this organization hasn't been competitive and contended for a championship for the better part of 35, 40 years, sincerely. Earnhardt winning the championship decades ago was the last time RCR was competitive, and Kyle Busch winning 3 races is really cool. It does help out a lot with his decision to move back to Chevy, but at the same time, I don't see him going far in the playoffs. He'll make the playoffs with a win or two, but not go far. Front Row Motorsports. Michael McDowell in the 34, finishing 15th in the point standings last year with a win at the Indy Road Course. Dominant victory. Todd Gilliland in the number 38 car, finishing 28th, with some assistance from Zane Smith making some starts in that car as well. Honestly, this team is in a building up year. Last year, making the postseason meant that they hit essentially a new tax bracket with the amount of prize money they got at the end of the year. McDowell himself said that doing that meant that they made so much money that they're going to be purchasing some critical components for the race shop that they need in order to stay competitive. And I do think that they will step it up this year. This year's kind of that rebuild. We're going to try some things here. So midway point on, this organization can step it up in a big, bad way. And I do think that they will be contenders, or at least McDowell will, on the super speedways and on the road courses, and that could make them playoff players this year. But again, it depends on how quickly that they adapt to the new Ford Mustang body and how quickly that they find some speed this year, because this is a new building up year for this organization. And Gilliland definitely proved he deserves to be in the Cup Series with how consistent he was last year. JTG Daugherty Racing in the number 47 with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Honestly, 16th in the point standings, a win in the Daytona 500. If you're going to win one race, win that race. Honestly, this organization should be stepping it up, and they're simply not. Somebody's got to be at the back of the field. I'm not calling the 500 a fluke win for them, because Stenhouse is a great plate racer. But at the same time, this organization has the resources. They have the money. They have the sponsors. And they're always not making the playoffs. The only reason they made the playoffs this year is because of that victory. And if they don't get a victory, they're not making the playoffs. No way in hell. Oh, Colleague Racing. This one I'm not looking forward to. 2 new drivers in the organization. You have Daniel Hemrick taking over the number 31. It finished 25th in the point standings last year. And you have AJ Allmendinger, who was in the 16 last year. This year, it's going to be a lot of drivers, honestly. They don't even know, honestly. SVG is going to be in the car for a handful of races. We're going to have to wait and see, honestly, how this organization does. But Colleague came into NASCAR with the thought process of, I have the money to sponsor my own cars if I have to. They started an Xfinity program, did great with that, jumped up to the Cup Series with a couple of charters, and never really set the world on fire. Had flashes of brilliance, couple of victories, which is great, don't get me wrong, but still missing something. And because of that, it's just not looking good for this organization. I mean, let's be blunt here. Daniel Hemrick taking over the 31 is a guy with money who bought that ride, and they're still looking for sponsorship for that 31 car for some races this year. And what has he done? He has literally a single victory, which, yes, it is a big victory. He won the championship race in the Xfinity Series and a NASCAR Xfinity Series championship, but that's it. That's all he's done. He's made some Cup Series starts. He ran a full season with RCR, so he is back in the Cup Series. I do think he's a better driver now, but I don't expect him to set the world on fire. I do not expect him to win a race. I do not expect him to make the postseason on points. The 16 car is going to have a rotation of drivers, and Honestly, I feel like Colleague is probably going to be selling that number 16 charter by the end of the season, if not a lot sooner. You have SVG essentially being put into that car with Trackhouse prepping the car, and that's a huge godsend for Colleague. I seriously think that this organization in 5 years won't exist in the Cup Series. I don't mean to be mean, but that's how they're trending. They're struggling to find some money. When you have Josh Williams jumping into the car out here at the Clash, basically because, well, you threw a temper tantrum on the racetrack. Yeah, come on in. You're popular with the fans. Why not? It's not a good look on the organization. They're struggling, and I really hope they find some money. I really hope they find a driver full-time in that number 16, but feels like we're watching this organization die slowly. And they're trophy hunters, but I think it was Jordan Bianchi said they're trophy hunting with bows and arrows or something like that. I'd go further. It's like they're trophy hunting with a water gun almost, and not a big one, but like a dollar store water gun. It's just sad, honestly. I hope they turn it around, but they probably won't. This organization should be on the uptick. Spire Motorsports with Corey LaJoie in the 7 car finishing 26th in the standings. Carson Hocevar taking over the 77, which finished 33rd in the standings. Thank you, Ty Dillon. And then the new entry, the 71 of Zane Smith. They just purchased the building that Kyle Busch Motorsports was in, and they purchased that charter. They have Zane Smith racing for them in that 3rd car that is technically paid for by Trackhouse. I do think that they are on an upward swing. You look at LaJoie, he has gotten better every season. He hosts the show Stacking Pennies now on SiriusXM, and he's just continued to stack those pennies, and he is stacking in a big bad way. I do consider him to be a playoff threat on points or potentially getting a victory. I do think that this could be the year that they break out and get that victory. But we're going to have to wait and see. He finally has some competent teammates underneath him, with Carson Hocevar and Zane Smith definitely going to be giving him the support that I think he's desperately needed over there. But at the same time, expanding to a 3-car organization is a big feat, and moving into a new building is also part of it. So this is going to be a build-up year for them. They've been building up essentially for the last few seasons, so maybe in the latter half of the season they could step it up, but again, we're going to have to wait and see. This one should be extremely interesting. Legacy Motor Club switching over to Toyota in 2024 with Eric Jones in the number 43, finishing 27th in the point standings. John Hunter Nemechek moving over to the number 42, finished 32nd in the point standings with a melee of drivers last year. And then you have Jimmy Johnson in the 84 for about 9 starts at the big marquee events. I do think that Jones and John Hunter Nemechek will eventually start to gel and will eventually start to make something happen. But the question is when? Maybe the halfway point, maybe past that. It depends on how quickly that they hit on something, and can they hit on something. Again, this is a small organization. This is the remnants of petty enterprises, essentially. And I just don't know. I really don't think that they're going to set the world on fire. They might get a victory here or there, maybe. They could point their way into the playoffs, but I'm not counting on that. A victory is their only way into the postseason, I think. Jimmy Johnson's not going to do good in that 84. A lot of people were saying, oh, he's going to contend to win races in those 9 races with Toyota. No, he's not. Listen, he's 48 years old. He doesn't live in the United States anymore. He lives in London with his family, and nothing wrong with that. It just means he's not going to be at the race shop in North Carolina that much. So it's not like he's running the ship. He's not. He's the money guy. He's the name guy. And he essentially is just going to come to the shop when race week is in those 9 races. And I don't have a whole lot of faith in this organization yet. The Toyota partnership, the Toyota resources are the only thing that potentially can save them. They announced last year that they were switching over to Toyota from Chevy, and Chevy cut them off. So last year was essentially a dud year because they were doing it by themselves. And they did fine. They didn't do great, obviously. But again, we're going to have to wait and see how they do next year. Wood Brothers with Harrison Burton in the number 21, finishing 31st in the point standings. If Harrison doesn't step it up this year and at least contend for victories or at least top 10s, he's out of this ride by the end of the year. I don't see him being in this ride next year. I really don't, unless he steps it up. And everybody says, oh, that's a Penske car. And yes, it's true. But do you really think that Penske's giving him the exact same car that they're giving to Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano? No, not at all. They're giving him the car that Ryan Blaney drove 6 months ago, if that. So it's the Wood brothers. They're one of those legacy teams that have been in the sport since the dawn of time, but they're not all there, really. I really want to see them do good, but I don't think Harrison Burton's the guy, and there's multiple drivers in the Xfinity and Truck Series that are looking at this 21 car like, oh, if I impress Roger Penske, I'll get that 21 car. That's desirable for some drivers, and it should be. We saw Ryan Blaney win in it last years ago, and he went on to win a NASCAR championship. So this car technically can win. And Harrison got a new crew chief late last season. They started to gel and work on things. They got excited, but it feels like he moved up into the Cup Series too quick, which we know is true. But now is when it's like, okay, you've had a couple of years now. You've had 2 years in this car. Now year 3, you better step it up. You better win. He arguably almost has as much pressure as Daniel Suarez in the 99. Both drivers need to win this year, or at least contend for wins and show up, finishing top 5s, top 10s consistently, or they're both going to be out of a ride. And honestly, come to think of it, I could see Daniel Suarez jumping into this 21 car when Harrison Burton gets fired. Notice I said when, not if. And that's assuming he doesn't step it up at Trackhouse this season. We're going to have to wait and see. And then, of course, the little engine that couldn't, Rick Ware Racing, Justin Haley taking over the 51 car, and Kaz Grala going to be racing 25 races in that 15. Riley Herbst racing a handful of races in the number 15 with Monster Energy on the car, and supposedly Cody Ware will be making a handful of Cup starts as well, although we're hearing they're struggling with sponsors. Listen, Haley kind of shocked the world by saying he's moving over to Rick Ware, but they've been on the RFK campus for, I think it's been about 14 months now, give or take. So people saying, oh, they're at RFK now, they're going to do great. No, they were at RFK all last year, and they didn't set the world on fire. Yes, Justin Haley is a huge talent upgrade with a multi-year contract for Justin Haley and that number 51, but the 15... frankly, it needs a veteran driver, and Kaz Grala, no offense, is not a veteran driver. He's a young driver who hasn't really proven himself yet, no offense. I like Riley Herbst in the car. I think that actually might warrant some success over Kaz, no offense. But at the same time, go get a Cole Custer to race some races, a Ryan Newman, something like that. But I don't know. I question where this organization will go in 2024. They are not making the playoffs. Let's make that clear. But a top 25 in points for the 51 would be huge, and it's definitely a possibility. But what do you think? Who's your favorite driver, and what do you expect from them in 2024? And go ahead and leave it down below. Who do you think is going to be the NASCAR Cup Series champ in 2024? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're there, make sure that you mash that subscribe button so that you do not miss a video in 2024. And if you want to keep up with all motorsports news across the board, make sure that you log on to arnrace.com for the latest motorsports news. ARN, the Motorsports Authority. I want to thank you so much for watching the 2024 season preview from the LA Memorial Coliseum. I'm Alan Bailey. We'll see you at the track.